Hi! Family and friendship help people develop resilience to life's tribulations and to bounce back from setbacks. There's no greater antidote to life's stresses than satisfying human relationship. One of the main causes of our automated and impersonalized modern life is that our capacity to connect well to other people is being diminished. For example, in my neighborhood, I don't get to see my neighbors except on purpose. So by the way, if you are not already subscribed to our channel, can you please do so now? Thank you. Now back to the subject of the day. Look, national, religious and ethnic loyalties are easy to pretend. But the fact is today we are surely less loyal to the primary human relationships of family, friends, classmates, fellow workers or neighbors. In an increasingly individualistic pursuit of wealth and by treating internet networks as social, we often forego meeting real people. Regardless of one's bank or success capital, people with low social capital are more likely to lack empathy with others. As a result, they fear rejection, which nourishes their tendency to be lonely. If a misfortune strikes, they feel they are the only ones suffering. Feeling isolated can disrupt sleep, raise blood pressure, weak immunity, increase depression, and lower subjective well-being. Loneliness is frequently the root cause of feelings of rage, melancholy, despair, worthlessness, bitterness, meaninglessness, helplessness, or gloom, you name it. John Cacioppo, the director of the Center for Cognitive and Social Neuroscience at the University of Chicago, is the world's leading expert on loneliness. In his landmark book, Loneliness, Cacioppo revealed just how profoundly the epidemic of loneliness is affecting the basic functions of human physiology. He found higher levels of epinephrine, the stress hormones, in the morning urine of lonely people. Loneliness, in fact, burrows deep. Cacioppo writes, when we drew blood from our older adults and analyzed their white cells, we found that loneliness somehow penetrated the deepest recesses of the cell to alter the way genes were being expressed. Loneliness affects the basic process of DNA transcription and not just the brain. When you're lonely, your whole body is lonely. Mother Teresa had seen it all to know. The biggest disease today is not leprosy or cancer or tuberculosis, but rather the feeling of being unwanted, uncared for, and deserted by everybody. The problem has, if anything, become more serious since Mother Teresa spoke those words. The latest medical research shows that lonely people are almost 2 times more prone to die prematurely than those who don't suffer from loneliness. And we must also take into account the impact of loneliness on one's quality of life. We live faster, travel more, and spend more time by ourselves than at any moment in human history. One thing is clear: loneliness is our harvest. We often associate loneliness with old people. That surely is a problem, but aren't we missing something here? The sense of isolation doesn't arrive with gray hair. Instead, it's bred by an individual and fostered by a society. Yes, students have to work hard in isolation and researchers have to toil in seclusion, but that has always been the case. You must understand that being alone is not the same as being lonely. The problem arises when our regular lifestyle diminishes our capacity to connect and our sense of reconnection. This deficiency becomes a lot harder to bear when we get old and live a less active life. Loneliness is not just a matter of external conditions, it's a state of being. In an extreme example of what a modern lifestyle can bring, in Britain, a young woman named Joyce Carol Vincent died and wasn't discovered for 2 years. More than 2 years, in fact. And neighbors ignored the strange smell coming from her apartment. When her body was finally found, the TV was still on. A number of other such cases have also occurred. So mind you, we are probably living in the best era of human history yet. And to say otherwise would be ungrateful to the efficiency and elegance that technology brings. But it's up to us to learn to use it to our optimal benefit. For example, after fooling around a bit on Facebook, I learned that a connection is not the same thing as a bond and that Facebook is not meant to create bonds. The problem arises when we look for intimacy in internet connections and communication. As John 𝐥𝐤𝐤 explained, forming connections with pets or online friends or even God is a noble attempt by a compulsorily gregarious creature to satisfy a compelling need. But surrogates can never make up completely for the absence of the real thing, isn't it? The real thing are actual people in the flesh. If you use social media to increase face-to-face contact, it increases social capital. So, for example, if social media let you organize a game of football among your friends, that's healthy. But if you turn to social media instead of playing football with your friends, that's unhealthy. Yes, our web of connections has grown broader, but it has become a lot shallower. We have never been more accessible, but we have also never lived in greater isolation. Technology continues to create a world in which we can't afford to be out of contact. Yet we have never been more detached from one another. More and more of social media means less and less of actual society. We live in bedsets of individual existence along the freeways of connectivity and information, many of us addicted. Yes, it serves a purpose, but the idea that a website could deliver a more friendly, interconnected world is bogus. The depth of one's social network outside social media is what determines the depth of one's social network within social media, not the other way around. As long as social media transfers established networks from one platform to another, it can be used productively to maintain and reinforce those. It can never compensate for the joy of making new acquaintances at a party, for the annoyance at the odors of someone next to you, or the disbelief of someone spilling her drinks onto you. In my view, while it's not a cure for loneliness, social media in itself doesn't create loneliness for a normal person. Much of the blame accorded to it is unjustified. The people who experience loneliness online are lonely away from the internet too, and merely use social media as a platform for lonely skulking. As everywhere else, correlation is not causation. You can discipline yourself to use Facebook, for example, more productively. Here are 4 suggestions. First, keep the number of friends restricted to the people you know personally. Only accept friend requests from other people who have a reasonable common connection. This means that the activities of a majority of your Facebook friends will be of personal interest to you. Second, instead of meaninglessly scanning status updates, use it for more personalized small messages. Third, when something merits your attention, instead of clicking the meaningless like or other button, try and make a brief comment to communicate your feeling. Fourth, eliminate all unhappy interaction with and reaction to Facebook. The things that you can't control should not be affecting your emotions as much as they do these days. The truth is that loneliness is not something that Facebook or the social media is doing to us. We are doing it to ourselves and are using the social media as a tool, just as we can use a car to either travel alone or to pick our friends on the way. It's ironical that loneliness is something we spend our wealth cultivating. For example, moving from cramped districts into bigger and more isolated houses, preferring to travel alone in cars rather than on public transport, working in cubicles instead of open plans, buying online regardless of COVID-19 instead of buying at stores. Blaming technology as some fuzzy, unfriendly force of history that drives our actions is a poor explanation, believe me. It's about us. We make decisions about how we use our machine, not the other way around. You must try and keep a balance in deciding when to bypass the circus of our world to serve yourself. You must try and retain a modicum of pleasurable human interactions with some real people, like salespeople, shopkeepers, insurance agents, travel agents, whom you choose because you enjoy dealing with them. What remains irrefutable, though, is that real person-to-person social interaction matters. If we meet fewer people and get together less, when we do get together, our bonds will be less important and less fluid. To me, the decrease in the quality of social connections is the single most important cause for the rise in loneliness. We all have far fewer confidants than our ancestors did, a void that we try to fill by hiring professional carers, battalions of clinical psychologists, social workers, marriage therapists, mental health counselors, substance abuse counselors, life coaches, and whatnot. In the absence of a psychiatric diagnosis, these psychic attendants merely help us cope with regular problems of life, believe me. The biggest remedy to the epidemic of loneliness is to create a life and a society which doesn't outsource the work of everyday caring. As simple as that. So now it's your turn to tell others if you ever feel lonely and how do you combat it. Let others benefit from you in the comment section below. And yes, don't forget to like and subscribe, please. Thank you.